Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very highly decorated and senior officer from the Indian Army, Lieutenant General Shokeen Chauhan. General Chauhan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Honored to be in your company.
Thank you. General Chauhan is the former Director General of Assam Rifles. He has been recognized and honored by the President of India with the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, an Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, a Yudh Seva Medal, a Sena Medal, and a Vishisht Seva Medal. And not only is he a soldier, he's a thinking soldier, and he's completed his PhD. He's also the chairman of the Ceasefire Monitoring Group. So, General, after such an amazing journey, let me take you back right to the beginning and ask you a simple question. From a young cadet to a three-star general, what did you do right in this journey?
Ashutosh, firstly, thank you. I'm honored to be a part of your show, honored to be a part of the 1,200 people you've chosen. And I'm so glad you chose me. What's amazing is that nothing was pre-planned. I didn't plan on being a general. I planned on being a good officer. At each point of my life, I constantly reassessed my capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is that throughout my time,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't, I didn't get into what I'd say extreme ambition.
Okay.
I didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an aim of becoming a general. I wanted to be a good officer. And for that, let me make this a little interesting as to how things change when you're young. I was a young second lieutenant, actually, and a lieutenant. I had a soldier who, was my buddy. I still remember his name, Dal Bahadur Limbu.
Mm-hmm.
And Dal Bahadur, was a very soft, gentle person from a village in Bhojpur, Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to chat about it. I was a young officer. He was a young soldier. We'd sit down and chat. And unfortunately, Dal Bahadur got cancer.
Mm.
And as he was dying of cancer, I was sitting with him in the hospital in INHS Ashwani in Bombay.
Mm.
And he said, Saab, I'm not married. I know I'm dying. My check, the insurance check. And those days it was about, say, 85,000 rupees. It wasn't much, but I'm talking of 82 actually. He said, sir, I need you to take it, need you to give it to my mother. I don't want my elder brother to get it for whatever reason. And my elder brother has a son, Basudev, who must be given an opportunity to study.
Wow.
So I was a young, careless, officer, beaming, a huge energy, as young officers are. But then when this boy died in early 83, I told my commanding officer, I said, look, I want to go on leave. And I want to take this leave and go to Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to do this for him. So that started the process of actually, seeing how my soldiers looked up to me.
Correct.
I didn't have an idea how I looked after myself. I was just a normal guy. So my soldiers, so I went in the December of 1983 to leave. And there are two incidents here. One is that, we had to walk about 2 days to reach his village. Eastern Nepal in 1983, even today, is notoriously bad for roads. They simply don't exist. So we got off at a place called Dharan and took another bus. It took us, grinding journey to Dhankuta. From where we got off and had to walk 8 hours to the Arun River.
Wow.
Very huge river. It was about, say, 11 in the morning when we started. So by 6, we had reached the Arun. And unfortunately, it was dark. It was December. So the Maji, the boatman, had
Mhm.
gone over the other side and wasn't available for us to move across the Arun River.
Mm.
You can imagine December in Nepal,
Yeah.
extremely cold.
Mm.
So I had another soldier with me, and I told him, I said, "Look, I think we'll have to spend the night. I'm not going to go backwards.
Mm.
So find a place for us to stay."
Mm.
So he came back after 15, 20 minutes or maybe half an hour. And he said, "Sir,
Mm.
there's a lone house about a kilometer from here.
Mm.
There's a young lady there with a small child. When I told her that you're coming,
Mm.
she said yes, but it's a single room, so we'll have to stay in the cow shed." So I said, "Yeah, as long as there's a, we covered,
Mm.
it's okay." We had our sleeping bags, and it wasn't a problem.
Mm. Mm.
So next morning when I woke up, Ashutosh, I found this young girl. She was very young. She had a child. So she was making garland of flowers.
Mm.
So I asked her, I said, younger sister, Bahini, as they say in Nepali, because I speak Nepali.
Mhm.
She said, I said, Bahini, weren't you afraid, that two strange men came to your house, you were living alone? And she looked at me and she said, Dai, that is elder brother, it says Dai. When I heard that you were an Indian Army officer, I felt that God had come.
Wow.
And gods don't do wrong things.
Mm.
That's the first time in my life I reassessed uh, thought process of who I was.
Mm. Amazing.
When you're young, you don't really feel you don't really know yourself. I was not particularly a great cadet in the NDA.
Mm.
Definitely not in the first 50. But this reassessment of knowing who I was and what was expected of me
Yeah.
came through this young girl.
Mm. Amazing.
Who told me that, look, as far as we're concerned, you're God.
Wow.
Now you have to live up to it, and it's up to you.
What an amazing story. What an amazing story.
That, in fact, changed me in many ways, Ashutosh. It changed the way I looked at things.
Mm.
And the other story here,
Yeah.
since we are in the point at which we're talking,
Yeah.
what it was expected of me.
Mm.
I was a commanding officer. We were fighting in Kashmir, the 11th of December.
Mm.
I had lost two soldiers, in a terrorist attack, and we were in the process of, picking up their bodies and, trying to kill the terrorists who killed my soldiers. It was an extremely bleak evening, extremely bleak.
Mm.
It happens, when you're in a large organization. As was colonel, it was 2000. It was in 2000. I was 42 years old, and I sat with my soldiers and I said, "Look, this has happened. We've got to kill these guys. And we've got to do this. And
Right.
maybe I'm pushing you guys too hard, but we have a job to do." And it was at 13,500 feet. Again, extremely cold evening, and I had lots of things to do. But the main thing was I get these bodies back, kill the terrorists, and get my soldiers out of a losing situation. So one of these soldiers stands up and says, "Sab, you don't have to feel sorry. We expect from you that you will be the best there can be for us, so that you can get us victory." He says, "We've signed up for a certain job, so some of us will lose our job. But we look up to you to ensure that not many more due to incompetence die."
Correct.
So he, in other words, told me that we expect the highest competence from you, and we expect you to be a leader. So there, then again that jolted me into saying that, look, I have to be the best. I can't allow, a failure here. So that's how things change, Ashutosh. When you reassess yourself and you see, and at each point, you don't know what you're going to do.
Correct.
But the only thing is that you as a leader have to push people forward. So I would like to, think of these two as milestones in my life.
And what amazing stories. These are such amazing stories. So let me just keep moving on, General, and we'll let me talk to you a little bit about counterterrorism and insurgency. And you are a Gurkha officer. So when I was reading about you, I was reminded of a comment of Field Marshal Manekshaw, who said, if somebody tells you he's never tired, he's a liar or a Gurkha.
Yeah.
What was it like to serve in Indian Army's, in one of the most decorated regiments of the Indian Army?
The thing is, Ashutosh, I told you before, when you go to a Gurkha battalion, and I was second generation here.
Yeah.
So I speak Nepali fluently. When I was born into the regiment.
Mm-hmm.
So I speak Nepali fluently.
Okay.
Thing about Gurkhas is that they give you the chance to be their leader.
Okay.
In that, they trust you.
Okay.
They trust you for your competence and they trust you for your incompetence. The second is that in trusting you, they actually allow you to lead them. And it's not that they're not afraid. It's not that they're not tired. But when you go and live and see the kind of lives they live in Nepal, after that time, when I told you I went to Nepal, I went to Nepal 11 more times.
Wow.
Trekked in those areas, looked at the people, saw how they live. Their lives are extremely difficult. In the month of December, in some of those villages, like the one that Dal Bahadur in Right State, there is not even, for water, they have to go down.
Wow.
Maybe 5 hours, 6 hours to get the water and come back. They subsist on they call it kursani or green chili. The mother has stored an odd green chili on the top of the roof and takes it out only when a guest comes or when there's a need for a feast.
Right.
So when they live these difficult lives, they are capable of so much more, ability.
Right.
Because their expectations are different. So when they're the best troops to have in mountains, they're the best troops to have in the jungles. But more than anything else, they're the best troops for a counter-terrorism operation.
Okay.
The reason is they are not violent people. They can come to violence immediately. They can get very, very angry, but they're also very gentle.
Okay.
So normally in counter-terrorism and insurgency situations, you don't have human rights problems when you are leading Gurkha.
Correct.
Which is a bane of the other troops because they tend to get angry. When troops get angry when they lose a soldier, they tend to react against an innocent population. And that creates more terrorists and more insurgents.
That's it.
So this is what leading Gurkhas is all about.
Amazing. And, we have seen a lot of insurgency in different parts of our country. What steps are being taken to combat some of these insurgency problems?
Ashutosh, if you have read about insurgency, you would realize that the center of gravity of an insurgency situation are the people living in that area.
Well said.
That's the center of gravity. Which actually means that the insurgents come from within the people. If the mothers, and they're a very powerful, effect in a child's life, which you will agree, mother and the father. If they tell their kids that we don't believe in this cause, and I am not going to feed my child to this fire of insurgency, no child will go.
Right.
Once you understand that insurgency springs from the people, is the time when you understand that you have to deal with the people to bring this insurgency. So the steps that we have to take in these insurgency areas, and I've noticed it in Nagaland, I've noticed it in Manipur, I've noticed it in Kashmir, is governance. You have to bring good governance. You have to bring education. You have to bring employment. you have to bring a transformation in their lives to make sure that the mothers do not give their children away.
Correct.
So the ultimate arbiter of that home from where that insurgent or terrorist is born is the mother.
Mm.
And if you can reach out to her and tell her, look, your child deserves a better future.
Mm.
He should not be in this insurgency or terrorism.
Mm.
They'll get him back.
Well said. Well said.
So,
and the army seems to have done a lot of very, very good work. I mean, this is what I was hearing in my recent trip to Manipur. And
yeah, so we have these, you know, in Kashmir, we have these goodwill schools.
Mm.
We have, I remember building a stadium. I was the commander in Shopia in 2008, 7, 8, 9.
Mm.
So I organize a peace run. We meet them. We have goodwill schools. We try and educate the children.
Mm.
We try and make sure that the education that we give them does not involve, you know, the scourge of terrorism or the issue about killing somebody else to, you know, appease the God that you follow.
Mm. Mm.
In Nagaland, we have similar structures. We have the Army Development Group. We have bulldozers with us. We have engineers. We have veterinarians. We have doctors. We make these teams and we send them into difficult villages, wherein we ask the villagers what do they want, and if they want a playground, we doze an area to make a playground. We give them, you know, equipment to play, especially football. You know, these younger people play very well. Archery is another place where the Northeast is boxing. All these comes through putting the youth into a different stream. Assam Rifles also runs 44 schools. Wow. And I was, you know, 42 of them are primary level schools. Those primary level schools gives education. And I found that there was a lot of comfort in children attending your schools. And I feel that education, governance, employment are the three mantras for any government. And we've got to do it honestly, Ashutosh.
Correct.
No other way.
Correct.
No other way.
Correct. So, General, you've served for many years in Northeast India, and the Northeast part of a country has traditionally been very restive. You know, people are not. And it's only now that we're beginning to see some kind of integration. What are some of the challenges the army and the country has faced in these northeastern states?
See, to understand the Naga insurgency, because that is what started the insurgency in the Northeast.
Right.
The Naga insurgency.
Right.
From 1929, when they made the Naga Club, when members of the Nagas who had been taken by the Brits to fight the First World War in something called the Labour Corps. When they came back, they were a little more educated than their fellow tribesmen.
Right.
So they formed what was known as the Naga Club. It was really a social organization to try and bring up their tribes. From that time onwards, and to the point at which we were reaching our independence, the Nagas stressed that they had not been a part of it.
Okay.
And in 1946, they had the Hydari Accord, which actually said that, look, and this was Governor Hydari of Assam, who said, 10 years, be with India. After 10 years, we will give you the option of secession. But for 10 years, give it there. And if you like the idea of India, be a part of us. Which seemed to me as a sensible way to go. But by 1951, the political leadership in Delhi had decided to do away with this accord. And subsequent things happened by which an armed insurgency started by 1956. More than anything else, Ashutosh, it was the fact that one did not believe in that they were a part of us. Two, we had not helped them in any way to create infrastructure.
Mm.
We had not taken schools there. We had not given them the idea of India.
Mm.
And that they were actually, looking towards Myanmar, because that's where they actually migrated
Correct.
from 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of migrations had taken place in
Mm.
Assam. So when there's a separation of that kind, Ashutosh,
Mm.
and these are minorities with different languages,
Yeah.
different, religious following, different gods, different
Mm.
structures, different traditions, as a larger majority,
Mm.
our integration process should have been, much, much softer and better,
Correct.
which we missed out.
Mm.
So that's how the insurgency started.
Mm.
And if the insurgency has been running from 1956 till
Mm.
today, there has to be something that cause resonates in the people,
Mm.
which it has not been able to be. We have not been able to reduce that by violence
Mm.
or by directed violence or force by the
Mm.
state security forces, including the army.
Mm.
We need them to understand that they are a part of us.
Mm.
We need them to understand that they will not be discriminated against,
Mm.
that they will have full, full access to the idea of India.
Right. Well said. Well
So
said.
this seems to be the problem. There's a dichotomy in the thought process.
Mm. Well said. So I'm now going to move to our two neighbors. When you've worked with both our big neighbors on our east and our west. Let me start by asking you first about China, and then I'll come to Afghanistan and Pakistan. But before I come there, I want to ask you a more basic question, and I've asked this from many people. It is often said that a Chinese soldier fights for his party, which is the People's Liberation Army. A Pakistani soldier fights for his religion, and an Indian soldier fights for his motherland. I'd love to get your perspectives, because every soldier is a great soldier.
I think every soldier, Ashutosh, fights for his cause.
Correct.
So whether the cause is the party,
Mm-hmm.
or the cause is the religion, or the cause is the country,
Mm-hmm.
it's eventually the cause.
Correct.
Secondly, every society builds a narrative around the soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And that narrative is a very highly thought process of morality.
Mm-hmm.
Because soldiering is a difficult profession.
Yep.
And you don't want to die for the wrong cause.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's the party, the religion, or the country,
Mm-hmm.
eventually it's the cause by which you say that I'm ready to sacrifice my life.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said.
So, so this is the ultimate arbiter.
Mm-hmm.
That cause has to be reinforced.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
In the Indian Army, we reinforce it by the use of religion, God, traditional practices, systems, wherein we link the soldier to the higher concept of protecting his motherland and protecting his country, which is which is a part of what his gods want.
Mm. Well said. And it's the Naam Namak Nishan.
It is the Naam Namak Nishan.
Very well.
Similarly, I've noticed the Chinese soldiers also look at their party as their god, as their protector.
Correct.
And the Pakistanis look at their religion as their protector.
Well said. Absolutely.
So I don't think there's any very great issue here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we are all looking at the same concept.
Well said. So now talking a little bit about China. I remember when I used to talk to my father, who was in the 62 war, they were very, very poorly equipped in those days. And now what I read, the army is a absolutely modern army. But what are some of the challenges China represents for us?
See, having dealt with China,
yeah,
all I can say is that China has a clarity of vision. In 1950-51, Mao had spoken of the 5-finger concept. I wonder if you've heard of that.
I have.
That means Tibet is the palm of the hand.
Yeah.
Right. And Nifa, that's Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Bhutan, Nepal.
Are the 5 fingers.
are the five fingers.
Correct.
From then till today, that stance has not changed.
Yeah.
So the vision of the Middle Kingdom has been that we were great in the 17th, 18th century. We lost our way in the 18th and 19th centuries, but we are going to come back to dominate this world.
True.
Now, whether China is, of course, China is playing a game. Of course, she wants to tell India, as far as India is concerned, that look, we are the larger power.
Yeah.
You're a subordinate power. Right? India, on the other hand, Ashutosh, and I can be a little frank here, is that we inherited the boundaries of the British.
Right.
Of the British colonial empire. And maybe we haven't, got hold of knowing what should be really the boundaries of our country. We have made the McMahon line as inviolate. And maybe we should be explaining to the Chinese that this is how India stands now.
Absolutely.
The Chinese have explained to us that this is what they feel about China. And they will continue to change these lines to blur these issues so that the advantage during negotiation takes place.
Correct.
When dealing with Chinese officers and soldiers, I find that they tend to be very aggressive while dealing with you. They tend to be loud. They tend to make a lot of noise. They tend to threaten. You have to be reasonable. But you also have to have force to back your reasonableness.
Absolutely.
So the mistake we made is not having that force. And we somehow started experimenting with the degree of force we should be using.
Correct.
Right? General Rupert Smith, in his book, The Utility of Force, speaks of force as a system by which you plan your strategic operations. The idea that you can manipulate this force to create what you want where is the main issue everywhere. But if you don't give it a thought, then the utility of force decreases because you don't have force to back you. When you don't have force to back you, your negotiation with the Chinese reduces.
Absolutely.
Then you move from a point of strength to the point of weakness.
Correct.
Which they sense very quickly.
Absolutely.
With the Pakistanis, on the other hand, we've always used force. We've never used any other way, and we've dealt with them quite firmly. Okay? But with the Chinese, there was a point in the late 50s when we were still becoming a nation and we had downgraded our armed forces to the time when we lost the war in 62.
Yeah.
To the point that we started developing, that we started creating in this Chinaman the concept that he was 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
That has probably been reinforced in our political people, in their minds, in our diplomats, in our the bureaucrats, and we never allowed it to develop.
Right.
With Chinese, there is only one way. You have to have compatible force.
Correct.
And if you don't allow them to bully you, they don't bully you. If you stand firm, you stand firm. But you can only stand firm if you have force backing.
Absolutely right. And your response gives me an interesting segue to my next question, which is on Pakistan. That seems to be a nation in turmoil. What are your thoughts on handling our neighbor?
Ashutosh, when I was a younger commander, I was commanding the 8th Mountain Division in Kargil. I'm talking of 2012, 13.
Right.
At that time, within our political leadership, we had the thought process that a stable Pakistan was in India's interest.
Yeah.
And to keep it stable, we maybe had to accept what Nawaz Sharif was trying to say, or keep the political system stable and not allow the army to get a bigger hand, and therefore allow the political system greater space than we would have allowed otherwise. And that meant not hitting their army to a manner at which the political people could get, would not get upset.
Correct.
And that they would be able to deal with them but that didn't work. because Pakistan too deserves to be told
Mm.
that the only way we're going to deal with you is how you deal with us.
Right.
We are not fools.
Mm.
If you utilize terror,
Mhm.
if you utilize other means which are not meant to be used, we will utilize the same,
Right.
right? But don't think for a moment that we're afraid
Mm.
or that we as a nation don't have the resolve to sort you out.
Mm.
The difference has changed in now that we say an unstable Pakistan is not too bad an idea.
Absolutely.
And maybe a broken up Pakistan is a way to that.
Mm.
Or at least we are articulating it.
Correct. Correct.
And if we are articulating it and it reaches them that, look, India doesn't bother whether you're there or not.
True.
We're going to use the force to the manner at which we think it's useful for us.
Mm.
At that point, they understand that India might just do that.
Mm. Well said. Well said.
So these are the two different kinds of situations how we treated Pakistan at one time,
Mm.
because we felt that a stable Pakistan was more in our interest.
Mm.
And now we don't care whether it's stable or unstable.
Absolutely.
We can deal with it.
Well said. Well said. So I've got time for one more question for you, General, and I'm going to ask you a question on Afghanistan. We've invested a lot of time, effort, money in Afghanistan. The new regime has come there. Pakistan thought Taliban is going to be very favorable to them. It doesn't seem to be working that way. What are your thoughts on managing our relationships with Afghanistan?
In the National Defense Academy, when I was a cadet,
Hmm.
we did something called international relations
Right.
as one of the many subjects we did.
Hmm.
And the first rule of international relations was that there are no permanent interests.
Absolutely.
That, there are no permanent friends or enemies.
Yeah.
There are only permanent interests.
Correct.
The permanent interest of a nation eventually decides how you're going to behave with others.
True.
I'll just leave Afghanistan and go to Nepal because that's an issue that we need to understand.
Mm.
Nepal is a small country between India and China.
Yeah.
Or between India and Tibet is part of China. We can't expect that Nepal will continue to, be with us if she does not see an advantage.
Mm.
If she feels that India is not strong enough for her, then she will go to China.
Correct.
And to her, national interest or permanent interest is firstly ensuring her own independence,
Mm.
her own survivability,
Mm.
and that can only ensure there is a balance of power between what they used to call the kingdom of the south and the kingdom of the north.
Right.
Similarly with Afghanistan, time and time again, despite all the interferences by these large powers,
Mm.
what comes back is that Afghanis have their own clear idea of what is their national interest.
Mm. Okay.
And their national interest might mean, and I'm saying might mean, the unification of the Pashtun tribe.
Right.
And that might mean that the Durand line, which has expired now, the
Yeah.
100-year line,
Mm.
will always be a bone of contention for Pakistan. Because the Pashtuns will live in Pakistan too.
Mm.
And as they used to say that, you've been a Pashtun for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
You're a Pakistani for only 75 years.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So the loyalties of the Pashtun tribe may destroy the concept of using religion as a binding factor.
Yep.
Afghanistan's always going to look at that issue because their dominant tribe is the Pashtun tribe.
Correct.
The second issue is Afghanis used to be actually our neighbor.
Mm.
Pakistan didn't exist 75 years ago.
Mm.
There was a very close relationship between us and Afghanistan.
Correct.
A lot of trade took place, a lot of movement took place. And if you see history-wise, historically, Ashutosh, you can see the movement from Central Asia, from Iran to India, the old Silk Route, all the old trade routes were all from this particular line. And Afghanistan for centuries used to be the transit point for the movement of trade caravans. Afghanis would either be a part of the trade caravan or would be retailers by picking that up and coming into India to sell. There was always a close relationship. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was a Pashtun. He could well have identified himself as Afghanistan. It was just an artificial line that Sir Henry Durrant created by creating the Durrant line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well said.
So eventually, I think, and I've noticed this even in Nagaland, Manipur, I've noticed that tribal loyalties are eventually the deepest loyalties.
Absolutely.
I feel that a neighbor's neighbor is a better friend than the neighbor itself, because unless you have good fences, you will never have good neighbors.
Absolutely. Well said, sir.
So,
and on that note of a neighbor's neighbor, which is you're going back to Chanakya Niti, thank you so much for speaking to me, General Chauhan. Thank you for talking to me about your incredible journey, your two stories about the young soldier and about the young girl where you stayed, where she said an Indian Army officer is like God. Thank you for talking to me about counterterrorism and all the amazing work you have led your troops in across the whole different parts of North India. Thank you also for giving me your perspectives on China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Thank you for speaking to me, sir, and good luck.
Thank you, Ashutosh. What a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for The Brand Called You.